Our guest today is Mary Sparrowdancer. We're talking about toxic chemicals in our food, in our water, in our cosmetics. And the issue that really got me looking at this had to do with my wife, Claire, and she is a musician and a composer. And all of a sudden, we'd been together for a few years, and she starts getting all this joint pain. And it started in her hands, and then it got into her feet. And we went to doctor after doctor after doctor. They had her on these really serious pain medications. They had her on Neurontin for a while. And then when she decided she was going to stop that, they didn't even tell her she had to taper down. And, she almost went into, convulsions on the withdrawal from that. And, special shoes, all these different things, x-rays, they kept doing. And always it was to try this, buy one of these, take another one of these, so forth and so on. And ultimately the problem was we had to take something away, okay? Right. And the doctors were just institutionally unable to comprehend that the solution to the medical crisis was to take something away rather than buy something to throw on it. Mm-hmm. And in this case it was formaldehyde. And the more we get into this, the more we're realizing there are a lot of people out there with sensitivity to formaldehyde, yes, which is embalming fluid. It's a carcinogen, yep, and it's a very popular molecule. It's used in leather glues and furniture surfacing, and in the cheaper cosmetics and household products, they literally put chemicals in there that slowly release formaldehyde over time as a preservative, so the product won't go bad sitting on the store shelf or sitting in the truck or in the hold of the ship going wherever it's going to go. But for people who are sensitive to this stuff, it's a major problem.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, one of the for those of us who are sensitive to fluoride, we have no choice. I mean, the people who are pro-fluoride say, well, you can buy bottled water. That's fine, but I must still bathe in this that you are medicating me with. So.
And as you said, it's in the food chain.
It's in the food chain, yes.
It's going out through the irrigation systems. It's you're swimming in it if you're in the swimming pool.
Oh, yeah.
And again, the response by industry and the media is to make fun of anybody who's expressing the concern over fluoridation. We had the same thing back when tobacco still had a lot of political power and money, where even as the evidence began to pile up that there was a link between smoking and all sorts of respiratory illnesses, they would make fun of people who are anti-smoking and try and ridicule them so that they would be ignored by everybody else. And then finally we find out that it isn't the tobacco per se in the cigarettes. It was the radioactive fertilizers they were using for industrial growing of tobacco plants. And, I mean, these companies, they were doing things like sweeping up the floor, and what they were sweeping off the floor was going into the machines to be used as filler for the cigarettes. I mean, it was just awful, awful stuff. And, in this case, a huge public outcry succeeded in removing a serious health hazard from the public, and it was, major the Tobacco Corporation fought tooth and nail and spent all kinds of money trying to prevent it from happening. And we see the same thing. We're dealing with issues of monosodium glutamate, which is a chemical. It's sold as a flavor enhancer. It makes you want to eat more. It confuses the brain so that it no longer gets the I'm full signal. It's a direct contributor to obesity. It's literally prescribed as a medical treatment for people who are not eating enough to get them to eat more. Then we have aspartame. We've done aspartame so much on this show. Here we have a chemical substance that at one point was classed as a biological weapon because in high doses it stimulates the brain to the point where it starts killing its own brain cells.
Oh, brother.
And then it gets diluted down, and Don Rumsfeld comes in, and he politics it through the approval process, where even the FDA was...
favor.
Say again?
He had a favor to call.
He had a lot of favors to call.
Yeah.
And now we have this aspartame, and we're realizing it is also a very serious... the bottom line is, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be putting it in your mouth or on your body. Is really what it comes down to. And all these chemicals, and I know I grew up in the glory days of Monsanto and Dow Chemical, better things for better living through chemistry.
Right.
And now we're finding out these plastic water bottles, that we're drinking from are leaching these carcinogens into the water if they're left filled with water too long.
Right.
and it's all wonderful money makers for the companies that make them, but there are serious medical issues in this country. Like everyone talks about the obesity epidemic.
Right.
You know, in the United States, we're all very overweight in this country relative to other countries in the world. And some people say, well, that's because we're a wealthy country and we've got plenty of food and all the rest of it. But the reality is we have got aspartame, which is sold as a diet aid, NutraSweet, but it actually makes your body crave more carbohydrates. That's why the supermarkets will bundle diet sodas with the corn chips, because they know you'll drink the sodas and then you'll eat the corn chips and then you'll come back and you'll buy more, and they will sell more and make more money.
Well,
we have
actually,
Go ahead.
There's another story to this. In the 1980s, the USDA came out with the food pyramid, and
I remember that.
Pardon me?
I remember that.
Okay, the food pyramid. My friend Louise Light happened to be the one in charge of the food pyramid. She's also my book editor. But anyway, she has a wealth of information about what took place behind the scenes as she was creating the food pyramid. And what she created was a pyramid in which we should have the majority of our calories coming from fruits and vegetables, and we should only be eating an occasional treat made of cereals and grains, and when we have those treats, they should be only whole grains, but they should be a rare treat. So we were to have most of our calories coming from fruits and vegetables. Well, the cereal industry, and of course she was very innocent. The cereal industry went crazy because they knew that whoever the USDA was going to say should make up the largest portion of our diet, this was going to create windfall profits for them. So they offered Louise $60,000, and she refused, and so she turned her food pyramid in, and when it was published and given to the public, her food pyramid had been changed, and it was saying that instead of a serving of a maximum of 2 servings per day of grain and cereal products, they had switched it to 6 to 11. So the main portion of the American diet would then come from grain products, and this was, of course, a recipe for disaster, and Louise knew this. She was just sick about this. She couldn't left.
Well, I remember at the food pyramid also de-emphasized the eating of meat, and I remember at the same time there was a big stink from the cattle industry and the beef industry, and they were kicking up this huge fuss about how bad this was for them. And I understand businesses wanting to look after profits, but at the same time, a society has to have a social conscience where if too much of something is a bad thing, then you got to pull back and maybe diversify. And but yeah, I remember that every effort that there's been to try and get the U.S. diet kind of under control, it immediately runs into the economic powerhouse and the lobbying groups from the various food corporations who want to just go on shoving stuff down our throats as hard as they can because that's how they get their profits. Now we're finding out that some of the chemicals that they've got in there are specifically there to make us want to eat more.
Right.
And gee,
collector.